All right.
I feel like it's up too high.
What's up?
What's up, y'all? We're live.
We live as hell. We all the way live.
Let's get there.
You know what I mean?
Hopefully. Hold us up.
What's cracking with y'all, man?
I say, haven't been live. Oh, no, it's not that bad.
It ain't bad, right?
Straight.
Hey.
We couldn't tell.
We couldn't tell.
We're
look
straight.
Like people logging on, though. Look like people logging on in this month. That was up.
What's up, y'all? What's up? It's been a minute since I've been live. I'm back. So I keep saying this. I feel like the last couple of times I came on live, I said, I'm back, y'all. I'm finna come back live. But I'm not gonna lie, the reality of it is.
Look, we ain't gotta get into too many details.
I know. It gets tough. Trying to work out my schedule with school, with my kids. I homeschool my kids. I have a couple of different business ventures that I run, and things are starting to pick up. So it's been difficult, trying to figure out what is the more consistent time to go live. But today, especially with the Byron Allen case happening tomorrow, I just felt like, nope, let's just do it. Let's go. Whether I'm back in on Thursday or whether I'm back 3 weeks from now, but let's get on here. Let's talk about a couple of things. So I'm chilling with my boy today, Theo Wilson. This is my guy right here. One of my first friends that I met since moving to Colorado, and we've just been super dope ever since. So I don't know. Actually, this is like super impromptu. So like I'm walking, we're at the coffee shop. My coffee is across the table.
Oh no! Let me get your coffee for you. I'm gonna get your coffee for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm at the coffee shop and I happen to see him, and he's like, "What you doing?" I was like, "I'm about to go live soon. You want to go live with me?" So hey, here we are. We don't know what we talk. We just talking about what's going on in the Black community, because there's a lot going on now.
Too much going on.
It's a lot going on. It's a whole lot. But I definitely wanted to just like start chiming in and weighing in. But I'm super excited, y'all. So look, check me out. I'm in my new office. This is actually just one of the conference rooms that's here. My office is still being like decorated. It's not fancy yet, but they're still putting the name on my door. So once my name is on my door, then I'll be able to show everybody.
Let me tell you something. She downplaying her achievements. That office right there is beautiful. Okay. Now, despite the hot wings smell, which is because they've eaten hot wings, obviously, but the office is tight. I'm so proud of this sister right here. Listen, when she first moved to Denver, I saw her join the community and really try to get boots on the ground. And she came to me with this idea called the Black Business Initiative. And I saw this woman flesh this out. Shop Talk Live, my organization, helped her out in the beginning. She's blown up way larger than us, and she's just doing major things. So she paying these bills. So this is the hardest Black woman I know, and most Black women I know work goddamn hard. So that's saying something. So I just want to let y'all know that this is a boss.
I appreciate that.
Boss.
I don't like all them words.
Don't worry. That's my job.
That's my lowest.
That's my job.
That's my lowest love language is words of affirmation. My lowest love language. So he's gonna make me blush over here.
Light skinned enough, you are. But I mean, that's what's up. I'm half light skinned myself.
Half light skinned. I'm done with you today already. So hopefully I'll be able to like help, tour the office or whatever at some point. Not today. Like I said, the name ain't on there, but I'm really excited about it. We're actually in Welton, off of Welton. So if you're not from Denver, just with the significance of that. So Welton is the area that's been gentrified. Now, as y'all know, I am not from Denver. But when I got here, it was very evident that this gentrification thing was happening. So in the 5 Points down here, it was a historically Black district. And this street used to have a ton of Black businesses up and down it. And then since then, it's been gentrified. Now, Robert Smith, Matthew Burkett, and a few other folks have been coming down here. I think, I don't want to misspeak, but I think Chauncey Billups is a part of some of that, have been coming down, and they have been buying up certain portions of the block, really working to at least have it back under Black-owned control. But I think it's really dope to be able to come down here and bring the Black Business Initiative down to Welton. And so we're happy to be here.
She took the initiative, and it's a real thing now.
So,
but that ain't why we here.
That's not why we here. So let's talk. So Harriet,
Look. Go ahead, talk about Harriet. Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I have to give my caveat because I don't watch slave movies, okay, at all. None of them. I haven't seen none of them. So let me break down what I have not seen, okay? I haven't seen 12 Years a Slave. I haven't seen The Butler. I haven't seen The Django. I haven't seen Red Tails. I haven't seen Selma.
They made slave movie, love. It was after slave. What you talking about?
Some of them was.
Oh, okay.
I haven't
Red
seen
Tails, post-slavery. Butler, post-slavery. But I digress.
But you get my point. I don't.
That's about movies from the Black struggle from back in the day. That's what
I don't watch. There's a lot of stuff that I don't watch. Like I had to think twice about Hidden Colors because I was like, or Hidden Figures. I was like, let me see what's the spin on this? What are we really talking about? And though they're triggering for me, and I just don't really feel like I need to put that in my space when I have a lot to work on and a lot to work with. And plus, And
my philosophy is, if my ancestors went through it, I could at least watch a depiction of it. They endured it their whole lives. I could watch it for 2 hours. And that's why I always take the opportunity to at least see how Hollywood is adapting our narrative in with the current politics and whatnot. So this was that's why I went to see Harriet, among other things. But why didn't you go see Harriet?
So despite the fact that I don't go see those type of movies or whatever, and I've heard like great stuff. I mean, just for example, I've heard the Django was very empowering. I heard that Selma was very empowering. Like I've heard that some of these things have been empowering. So that's not really an issue for me, but it is more along the lines of what I like having in my space and in my energy or whatever.
Spirit, in her aura.
Right. And I could potentially send my daughter to go see Harriet or something like that. Like it probably still wouldn't be something that I would want to go and watch just because I just don't watch those types of movies.
Right.
But then there's all the other issues, right? So like, I feel like there's 3 primary issues that keep surfacing. And I'm gonna say like the white savior one is kind of in for me, right? Because I didn't really get the sense like killing the Black man could potentially be white savior-ish, but I felt like I never really got the sense from anyone's recount that it was just like this white man was like the hero of the story. The hero of the story.
Far from it. But
I never got that sense. So, but like I do get the white savior thing, like he killed the Black man and to save Harriet's life. So in that instance, but I didn't get that a huge white savior complex. But what I did get was so first of all, the Comcast issue, which we're going to talk about next anyway. But I definitely got the Comcast issue, which I felt like was, I felt like it was valid. Like
I think it is too. I think Comcast issue was valid.
Yeah, and I think that people like the way that I kind of heard it, and some folks that were like on Facebook and things like that. This one guy distinctly, I remember he was like, "So is anybody else checking out any of the other Comcast backed movies? Or are we just going to go after this one that just so happens to be Black?" And I'm like, well, I mean, so first of all, I see your point. Like, if you're not going to go and look at every movie, if you're not going to go and, research where all these movies are coming from and produced and what their take is on political issues and then why do it for this one, right? But I also feel like we have to start doing more due diligence around our own narrative, our own stories, the things that should belong to us. And there are things that are kind of mainstream. There are things that are out there or whatever, versus like the things that are our stories, our I don't want to just say like our stories, our narrative, our representation, our depiction, the way that we're represented, all of those pieces play a role in where we should have a bigger say, where we should care. So like if there are other Black movies or movies that are being directed towards our community, like, yeah, I absolutely think that we should look at where they're from and, check out all of that or whatever, right? But do we know, was it, this was brought out because, in my opinion, it was brought out because Antonio Moore was talking about it and Byron Allen was talking about it.
Antonio Moore, he was spot on about some things.
Yeah, so that's how I found out. That's what I started seeing, so then it's like, okay, well, so now and then for me, it's like, once you know something, then you know it, right? You can't unknow it. So if I went into the situation not knowing that it was Comcast backed, then it'd be like, oh man, I didn't know that. But then now once I know, like, am I then gonna still go forward with it?
Okay, so short story long, she ain't see the movie.
I didn't see the movie. movie.
Short story long, she don't see the movies. She don't watch slave movies. She don't do none of that. I saw the movie last night. Me and my queen went out and we seen the Harriet flick. And I'm gonna tell you something. It was beautiful. It was stellar. It was amazing. And here are my things about what I heard about it. So this is what I heard about the Harriet movie before I went to see it. Number one, heard there was a white savior. You know what I'm saying? This dude, supposedly a slave master who was kind of in love with Harriet. They had this chemistry going, and then he killed the evil black man and shit like that. I ain't seen no white savior through the whole movie. I was looking for him. I was looking for the white savior. He didn't show up, right? The next thing I heard was that Harriet Tubman was one of those movies that had her kind of portrayed as kind of soft. Somebody said she was bucking her eyes the whole time. She was on some Buckeye Coon type shit. And I was like, I didn't see none of that going on with the Harriet movie. And they said that Bigger Long, that's a hell of a name for your ass, goddamn. Bigger Long. That's a name for your ass. That nigga name is Bigger Long, okay? Bigger Long, the bounty hunter. Bigger Long, the bounty hunter. God damn. He's in the wrong industry. So I was told that Bigger
Really? That's where we're going with this?
Sure, why not? I was told that fool Bigger Long was the representation in the movie of all black manhood. And him being the bad guy, a fictional one at that. There was no record of this black bounty hunter named Bigger Long. He wasn't supposed to be a part of this thing. And when he got into the movie, he became something of a crystallization of what all black manhood is supposed to be. That ain't what I saw at all. What I saw in the movie was a bunch of good brothers. It's a bunch of good brothers. And then this dude. You see what I'm saying? And Bigger Long don't even show up to the last half of the movie. It is clear the whole time the enemy is Gideon. Gideon is the slave master's son.
Should we have said spoiler alert?
Spoiler alert.
Oh, okay.
So, spoiler alert. Gideon is the bad guy, right? You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So Gideon's the bad guy. He's the bad guy the whole movie for both hours, right? If there's any love story there, is where it belongs. Between Harriet Tubman and her husband.
See, I didn't hear anything about a love story. That's the second time you said that. Like that's just one I didn't hear nothing about a love story. So
okay, cool.
I don't know who else heard about that, but
just let you know, wasn't no love story between Harriet Tubman and no white man. Wasn't no white savior. My homeboy's daughter, Montague Connolly's daughter, Siri, told me that it was the bestest movie she had ever seen. The bestest movie she had ever seen. I was like, really? Okay, little girl, I'm about to go see that. When I saw it, I was like, okay. And there's a moment, I ain't gonna spoil it. There's a showdown between Harriet and one of these evil people, and she gets the whole W. She wins the everything against this dude. So I don't feel that the critiques, there were problems, but they were all disproportionalized. It was all blown out of proportions. And that's why I feel Harriet's worth seeing. Comcast, let's get into Comcast. So, true. Comcast own Focus Films. That's the thing. Comcast is standing against the Byron Allen lawsuit to preserve the Civil Rights Act of 1866. That's true. I believe that Byron Allen is justified in the lawsuit, and I hope that he wins that mug for all of us, right? But here's the thing. I crunched the numbers. Comcast brings in $36 billion a year. 40% of their subscriber base is Black. That's $15 billion every year, right?
Okay.
So where's Comcast gonna get more money? From Harriet or from your Black ass subscribing to it?
Okay. So there's other issues, but my thing is when we address our community, like, do we have to have an either or position? Can we not have an and? Can Comcast not get my money from Harriet and can they not get my subscription?
You still subscribing?
Do I still subscribe to Comcast?
Yeah.
I don't have cable.
Okay. That's fair.
So no, I don't subscribe to Comcast.
Are y'all subscribing to Comcast? Is that where you get your cable from?
But my thing is like, can we have an and? Because I feel like we do that a lot in our community. We have this constant like, don't do this, do this. Can we do both? Because I feel like at this point when we're talking about 500 years of suppression, that we have to really start shooting with like two guns blazing, tank in the back. I mean, we need to not be trying to, cherry pick when the reality of it is that. So, okay, let me back up. To your point, basically what we're saying is that Comcast is who they are because the Black community allows them to be that way.
Right.
That how much of their business is run off of us?
40%. 40%,
Okay.
the latest estimate.
So if somebody lost 40% of their business, they'd be in a fucked up situation.
That's right.
I mean, flat out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other side of that, and this is where we have to start looking at being more innovative, and we have to look at how to, how we diversify stuff or whatever. The other side of that is if 40%, if Black folks stopped utilizing Comcast in a lot of areas, they are the only service provider. So then we're cutting our community off from the internet and the rest of the world, right? So it's like, and to me, this is the problem when we don't think strategically, right? Because now when you have people saying, let's boycott Comcast, how?
Well, Comcast is not the only game in town in most places where Black folks are. In some places, they are.
In most places or in some places?
In some places, they are the only game in town. However, for example, you got places that you could choose between, like here. Okay, we're not the biggest Black population.
We can't even use here as an example.
Oh, okay, but for example, but there's Black people from Colorado watching this. You could choose DirecTV. They suck a little bit, but so does Comcast. You got places like Adelphia Cable. You could also choose them. So there's places.
All right, let's talk about in rural areas. Every metropolitan has multiple choices. There's not a metropolitan across the country that's not going to have multiple choices. But in rural areas where Black people are living and where we don't have a lot of access to, and we already struggle to get access to, I think that's important. The other side of that, is the fact that Comcast was for regulating, what is that law called? Regulating the internet, basically. They didn't want to.
Yeah, net neutrality.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They were for making sure that we didn't have access to the internet anyway, right? So you want to be the only provider of the internet, and then you want to control what we can access once we're on the internet.
Oh, they do for problematic. I ain't saying they do for aspect.
Yeah, they're problematic in a lot of ways. So then it's like, this is where we always get into this reactive conversation inside the Black community, right? Because to be honest, Harriet in and of itself is not going to make or break Comcast, which is why Comcast is really just a small portion, but I think it brings some awareness to how large of a role they play inside of our communities. And then why are we always in this reactive situation? Because we didn't watch and have enough foresight as they were putting up all these pieces of infrastructure and capitalizing and not monopolizing the market in the way that they did. That in and of itself is an issue. So I feel like it is a reactive situation that we are always in which we now see the problem, but we're so deep in it.
Got you. I think that you're right about that. We need to be more strategic in our foresight. We've got to figure out how to get in front of problems before they get on top of us, right? That's true. I will say that whatever happens with this Byron Allen lawsuit, and I really hope that he wins it. I know that the most important thing is that I gave Comcast $20 last night for Harriet. I given them $1,000 plus over a year because of my subscription. You see what I'm saying? Most of us don't live in rural areas. We live in urban areas. Black people, look, they talking about the cities. We're talking about Detroit, Atlanta. We're talking about Tallahassee, Jacksonville. We're talking about like the major metropolitan centers.
Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi.
Now, goddamn well that a lot of those people subscribe and the Comcast out there talk like this. Okay? Now, look, and it's good. It's good. Now, that's what they talk like. They don't talk like this. Okay? That's what I'm saying. A lot of those people out in the rural areas are red country. They just vote for Trump all day and every day. So, what I'm saying to you.
Okay, so we're gonna fact check.
Okay.
Theo.
All right, cool.
We're gonna fact check you. Like by the next live, we're gonna know how many Black folks live in those. That's not even remotely accurate.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So Black folks is living out in the country?
Yes, a significant amount of the 44 million Black people live in the country.
Okay, yeah. But when we're talking about their subscriber base, we're talking about dense metropolitan
but that's what I'm saying when we talk about how many people have access. So yeah, in metropolitan areas, they have access.
There's competition.
Right. In the rural areas, there's not. And that's where that's where they have captured a significant part of the market.
Oh, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But my understanding is that
we're gonna fact check.
Okay, I ain't got no problem with fact check. Let's go fact check. That's what I'm saying. Okay. See that?
Okay. That's so the other issue with the movie, I'm like for real gonna fact check that because I think that's like gonna be good to know. Because actually a lot of what Antonio Moore's conversation is hooked up on is around, when he's talking about ADOS and all of that, is that it's easy when you are, I don't know, let me not say easy, but it's one thing to see a narrative from people living in these metropolitan areas, people who come from certain backgrounds, people who have baby boomer parents. I'm one of them, right? So I'm not gonna, whatever. But then you have a whole nother subset of Black people in our community that aren't in that same position, right? Gotcha. And so places where, if you grow up in a city, you might not realize how deep some of those issues still are, or how prevalent they are still today, because you're not in the backwoods of Mississippi. You know what I mean? To see, even you remember Jasmine. Of course you remember. What did I say? You remember Jasmine? Jasmine living in Alabama now is like
she left Denver for Alabama. Go figure.
Right.
Ding, 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 ding.
What's up, y'all? So, like I said, we're gonna finish talking about this Harriet as we move on to Byron Allen. But if y'all have not already hit subscribe. Thank you for joining me. Y'all know I haven't been on in a while. So hey, Deadshot. I haven't been on in a little while, but I am going to be coming back. I just don't know when. I don't know exactly how frequent. That's what I'm working out right now, y'all. So my goal is to come and be with y'all live twice a week. My podcast is going to relaunch in January.
Hey, amen.
But right now it is really a scheduling issue in between new business, new contracts, kids, school, all of that, and really just trying to organize myself in a way that lets me come on consistently. So I miss y'all too. I really like having conversations with y'all, so we're just gonna keep it rolling. But make sure you hit that.
Hardest working woman in show business today.
I'm not. All right. So the other issue, so Comcast aside, I think Comcast is one of the smaller ones, right? I do have an issue with the actress, the main actress, Arevio, however you pronounce her name.
Arevio, yeah.
I have an issue with her for a few reasons. Not just, I don't know, talking shit about whatever, but talking shit about Black folks is like one thing. Black people, one of the things that I think we have to recognize as Black people, and I always like to approach our folks with a lot of grace. I literally say that all the time, and I'm really not being funny. I feel like you have to approach our people with a lot of grace because we are really traumatized people. And that trauma comes out in so many ways. There's a lot of spaces and places that we're not dealing with those mental traumas that we are experiencing, and they hurt us. They hurt us in ways that, for me, in order for me to keep my sanity, one, and for me to keep the fight going, and for me to keep pushing in the way that I do, I have to just forgive us because we just do some fucked up shit. And I can't allow that to deter me, even though it angers me at times. So I have to oftentimes swallow that, attribute it to that one person, not attribute it to us as the whole, and just recognize that that person is probably dealing with some trauma or some hurt that they have not gotten help for. And I can't let that affect my overall view of our people. But so many of us do. And that in and of itself is violent white racist propaganda. So, her having a negative view on African Americans, like a lot of Black folks have a negative view on.
I ain't dealing with these niggas.
Right. A lot of, Black people have bad views on you. You know what I mean? We just don't view each other in the highest light. And so one of the things that I've appreciated about some of the social media movements like Black Girl Magic and, all the different hashtags, right, is this push towards recognizing how great we are. But the reality of it is that we have to have such a heavy push. You know what they say, a good thing, I'm not going to remember the saying exactly, but it's like you can do one good thing, right? And it'll spread a little bit, but you do one bad thing and it spreads 10 times. 12 times fast. Yeah. And that's how we view each other. It don't matter how many good things that we do, we don't recognize that one bad thing, you know what I'm saying, will. And
I think that's a product of our trauma because it changes your lens. Trauma changes how you look at the world. So I forgave Cynthia Erivo because I read the tweets and I was like, he's ignorant, a little ill-informed, but I didn't see it as malicious. You see what I'm saying? It was just like, you're a Black British lady, sit down before somebody teach you about Black American culture. In the meantime, I think that she showed the love very, very well in terms of her actual role in the performance of the world. Now, with that being said, it's very important to understand something. Division consciousness comes from survival mode. Unity consciousness comes when you heal. Duality consciousness is something that's placed on you when somebody puts you in an us versus them situation. Slavery was an us versus them situation. This is an us versus them situation with us with the police and stuff, right? So it traps you on the left side of your brain where you're thinking about differences over similarities, right? And we've been forced to do that because Blackness has been made bad, less than, other, negative, right? And we internalize that. Internalized racism is one of the most deadly forms of racism. That's what we see in a lot of our misbehavior with each other. You can take the same data points, and if you have a different lens, if you have a unity lens, literally it's like putting on a different pair of glasses. That lens will take the same data and create a lens and way in which you can weave things together, right? And we don't realize that Black Americans, we've been forced to think in terms of separation, duality, and this ain't quite as good as this hierarchy. You see what I'm saying? When we take that lens off, I'm saying that there's a time to use that lens and there's a time to use the unity lens. And I feel that one of the things that this new movement is getting wrong specifically is when we start chopping ourselves up from other groups of Black folks, knowing that their trauma may be a little different, but they still could get the Black experience. My case in point, when I was introduced to violent white supremacy, like the first time I heard of a member of a white Aryan Brotherhood killing somebody, it was of an African immigrant named Omar Jah. He was from Senegal. I know his cousin, Muhammadu. He sells stuff at Brother Jeff's all the time, right? But Muhammadu's cousin, Omar, literally was just a Senegalese immigrant sitting at a bus stop. And a member of the Aryan Brotherhood just got released from jail and shot him because he wanted something Black dead. He didn't care what side of the Atlantic it was from. You see what I'm saying? So now that I know that, I can't really separate myself off from other groups of African folks like that. But if you got that duality lens and you're looking at this is different from this, then you don't realize that you're even doing that. You see what I'm saying?
And on ADOS versus FBA, so I have a couple of videos saved. I have to go back and hear a little bit more about what they're saying before I comment on that. I don't like to come like ill-informed and just give my opinion. I actually am not really sure what's the difference between ADOS and FBA. The way that I understand them both, they're basically synonyms, but it seems like there may be some issues that might have popped up.
They gangbanging now.
Stop it.
ADOS, the FBA, nigga.
Really?
I'm just saying.
I can't. He's not gonna be allowed on any more.
Oh, really?
No, it's all good. So I'm gonna come back to that because not on this slide. We're not gonna talk about that because I don't like to talk about something that I haven't even had an opportunity to fully digest. So I know that I have at least one video from Tyreek, at least one of them saved, and then I saw that Vicky Diller was talking about something tonight. So I want to go back and take a look. Like I want to come back and have an informed conversation about that because I do think that's important. And even in that duality sense, like that's not duality, acknowledging that American descendants of slavery have a specific legal claim. That's not a duality situation, right? Yeah. But then there are a lot of places where we do have that duality. And all I can say is I come from a place of grace with my people. Now, the other side of Aribo is a good question about her lineage and whether or not her family comes from a line of slaveholders or a line of enslaved people. And I think that's a fair conversation to have.
Which version of Igbo is she?
Right.
Which version of the Igbo nation is she?
I think that's a really fair conversation. Like, not to say that I think that's necessarily a space to boycott the movie, but I think that's a real fair question to ask, especially if you come from a line of slaveholders. I think that that's very audacious to then come in and play a slave. And then not only that, but to play one of our most iconic slaves.
Okay.
Enslaved.
So, all right, enslaved Africans, ancestors. Now, look at here. So there is a lineage of the Igbo that did actively participate in the slave trade. My thing is that a lot of us may be from that lineage as well. That's the thing. A lot of the slave holders and slave traders in Africa, when the advent of colonization came, them trading as got put on the ships and sent over here with us too. That's the thing. Somebody in the white community asked me, when we talk about reparations, ain't we gonna sue Africa for reparations? After all, they did participate in the slave trade. My stance on Africans is this.
Tell them to mind their business.
Yeah, right. Straight.
What's up, Georgia in the house?
Really, what's going on? My stance on Africans who participated in the slave trade is this. Everything that they gained from the slave trade, colonization sucked away from them anyway. That's why Africans, all their art and architecture is in British museums right now, you feel me? So there was Black people who whipped other Black folks on the plantation, period, right? One thing we say about African slave traders is, and this is documented fact, they did not know the fate that would befall the Africans once they got over here, all right? Oladu Equiano writes about that in his book. He was first captured by the Ashanti, and then he was captured by the British. And he was like, that slavery was night and day. What them Negroes did to me in Africa was nothing like what I encountered when I came to America, right? So then you got Black folks in America who were on the plantation whipping other Black folks, knowing full well how hard slavery was. You see what I'm saying? So if we make,
which is the same dynamic that we actually see oftentimes today, like that dynamic hasn't changed, and all of that is still a issue of violent white racists. Like, and that's why I always say, I don't feel like it excuses like the individual, but again, I try to look past individuals and look at systems, right? And so I can see an individual doing something like whipping somebody, but the reality is that they were placed into a system that pretty much said, either you do this or this is the consequences that happen to you. Okay. And so for me, and this is something that is always easier to talk about, like in this day and age, it's easy to talk about. I do, you guys know I do coaching. Like a lot of my coaching is around intentional living. My idea of how do I want to live, what my values are, you know, and having those really clear lines. And then I have a boundary as to what that looks like. I read this thing from a friend of mine today. I had a childhood friend. We went to elementary and middle school together. We went to middle school together. And she was just, so she took part in the slave enactment that was happening. Where did it happen? In New Orleans? Where was it?
Yeah, it was a reenactment of a slave revolt.
That was, yeah. So
I don't know where it was, but I saw something.
I think it was in New Orleans, but she took part in that. Like she was a part of that. I don't actually know that much about it. I just caught a whiff of it on her page because she was just kind of writing about it, right? And it was like, you know, as she was a part of this enactment and just really like getting into character and thinking about these things, and she was kind of recounting her childhood, she was really acknowledging how she feels like she would have reacted in that time, right? And so it's like you have a choice. Your choice could be, though, between some form of life or death. And even then, it's like, in which way do you want to die, right? Is it going to be quick and easy? Is it going to be torturous? Is it going to be, you know, what, you know, is it going to be by getting caught by bounty hunters? Is it going to be, you know, getting shot? I mean, how are you going to die, right, in this situation? Because in her mind, she's like, I'm not going to live in this situation. So in her mind, she believes she would have, if she was in her own current consciousness, in that time, she would take her own life. I think that we don't always recognize in that system the choices that people are given. And today, it feels like we have other choices, but people don't always see that. Some people feel like their choices between, you know, here and do I feed my kids, right? Some choices might be, at what level can I, you know, am I comfortable living? What, you know, what this or that and the other. And so it doesn't excuse like the individual, but I think that we do have to come into a place where we acknowledge and we have an understanding of the systems that we're placed in. Hi, Shay.
It's gonna walk on by. That's what's up.
Like, that's why I like being in office now. First of all, it's not my kids busting in.
Yeah, people we know.
But, you know, so anyway, it's just, you know, it's never to excuse a person, but it is to look at the system. It's to look deeper beyond a person and think about what environment that person has come up in, what choices they've had to make, what have they been taught and how they've been taught in order for them to make those types of choices. So we have to get into, you know, some of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I will say,
ooh, you handsome, Theo. that is the Theo.
I am Theo from Michi's house. Yes. Thank you very much, Simple Living. So here's what's going on with me. My homeboy said, when I'm holding two hot coals, you can't tell me which one colder. You see what I'm saying? Right. When I'm holding two hot coals, you can't tell me which one is colder.
Yeah, we don't talk about that, Lisa. Go ahead.
Yeah. I can't tell what my ancestors would have done if I haven't lived in their lives. That's part of why I like watching these slave movies. Honestly, the reason why I watch them is because I'm trying to get an emotional understanding of what that life must have been like and the resilience it took to live it, to survive it, to outrun it, to fight back. That to me is the quintessential reason why we should, even if Hollywood be getting it wrong sometime, take a look. They be getting it wrong.
There's too many white people in Denver, and I have to work with some of them as I try to like build this organization.
God, we're gonna pray for you. We're gonna pray for you. Praise Lord. I want you today to give this child patience, not to slap one of these Becky's way across. Look, the point is,
I'll be so serious. Y'all think I'm playing? Like it really is very triggering for me. I'm not saying that we shouldn't like be able to whatever. I'm saying it's a very triggering situation, right? And I spend quite a bit of time at this point. Like a good portion of what I have done has always been in the Black community, but now what I'm working on is changing policy and extracting resources back to our community, right? So I spend more of my time now going back to get resources and sitting in front of white folks and being like,
true.
I don't like to explain shit. You already know, like, first of all, I don't feel like it's ever my place to have to explain racism, the system, my experience. I don't have to explain my lived experience to white folks. So when I sit down in front of them, I like to sit down from a place of leverage, not from a place of compromise. And if I'm mentally and emotionally compromised, that's a problem.
Well, then we stay home that day. I would say, watch the movie on the sick day. We'll watch the movie, right? The reason why, the sister said a good thing. There was a lot of other brothers in the movie besides the character Bigger Long. Bigger Long, yeah. So the brother Bigger Long don't even come into the last.
You and this name.
I didn't write the name. Look at this Bigger Long. He a big dark-skinned Negro too, you know. But the thing about it is that
that part, what she said, I'd rather read their biographies first, and those are like, and that's where I can get my I can read that and come out more so than the visual.
I've been read Harriet's biography. It's like I like my daddy like knew Malcolm X on a couple of occasions. Anyway, so the bottom line is it's a bigger picture than Bigger Long. And that, I just wanted to see if you would spit out. You drink. So there was a lot of good brothers. You know what I'm saying? Spoiler alert. There was, first of all, her husband, you know what I'm saying? Her father, William Still, the abolitionist, and all the Black men along the way that helped her escape. You see what I'm saying? Like, they had to approve it. White people didn't write the slave movie, they had to approve it. Yeah. In a sense, but it's been that way since Roots. That seems to be more Alex Haley's problem. I know he had to get through a lot of that. You know what I'm saying? We are 40 years into slave movies now. You see what I'm saying? 40 years into freaking slave movies. You know, from Alex Haley to Harriet Tubman right now. We understand that there's a lot of stuff going on. Now, here's the thing that hasn't been discussed. This is what Hollywood keeps missing about the slavery experience. They still portray slavery on small scale. No Hollywood movie yet has portrayed the slavery industrial complex. The movie that got the closest to it was this movie called Goodbye Uncle Tom, but it wasn't produced in English. It had mostly Haitian Black actors to play the slaves. But they really showed the machinery, ship after ship, boatload after boatload, washing the slaves like merchandise, the vastness of the cotton fields. Like nobody's really recreated a cotton field that had like 300 slaves on it. See what I'm saying? Nobody's really reproduced and recreated like thousands of bales of cotton. You see what I'm saying? The scale of slavery is always misrepresented, in my opinion. Hollywood still has yet to go there. With that said, when you want to see a Black woman regulate. Harriet regulated. She regulated, period. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I think it's worth seeing.
And that's cool. And that's why I said, like, maybe, you know, if my daughter wants to see it, I might not stop her, but I don't know. We might still have to do the bootleg thing because I don't want to support Comcast, so we'll have to see. But I do want to go back to touching on this fictional character. Like, so now I heard your point that we're not going to. Theo, you
got to say it like that.
I'm not going to say it like that because. Why?
What are we gonna talk about?
Bigger Long. Okay, so Bigger Long, right. Get back to Bigger Long. And thank you, Lisa. Help us stay on track. Bigger Long in this movie. This is why. Okay, so just so we're clear, why he's not going to be allowed back on live. Can we keep it?
Okay. We're going to say
Big Long and this situation. So first of all, my issue, I just have a big issue with that. So here's what I do get, right? So we were talking at the coffee shop before we even got here to this, and he was just like, listen, he didn't even come on to the second half of the movie. Like, this isn't this hasn't been this hasn't been the main narrative. It's very clear who the primary villain is, right? Who the main villain is.
Who's Gideon, not Byron.
Who's the white slave owner who's trying to catch Harriet. And my thing is still what it is. At no point ever did a Black man need to be casted in that position.
That's fair.
And
I think that's a fair point. And I call it.
It doesn't matter how minute it was. It just never needed to be.
True.
And that is we need to really call that out for what it is. Mm-hmm. Call that out to the writers, whoever wrote it. I know I can't remember these names right now. It's too many names circling around. But call that out to the writer, call that out to the directors, call that out to the producers, and make that a thing. That narrative of violent Black men has to stop. That's bullshit. It's been around for far too long. I talk about this all the time in the propaganda when you really take it all the way back to...
Just when you know she didn't watch the movie. But yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Big Long.
It's not, but I'm trying to make a serious point. You're making me laugh. I don't appreciate it. I feel like that narrative does have to stop. So are you going to tell me that there wasn't a lot of abuse towards Black women? We know he killed one Black sister.
Mm-hmm. It's a slavery movie. Everybody got abused. Everybody, except for white people.
So what abuse did he suffer?
Oh, well, he didn't say, no, he was completely shot through the back of the head. He was fucking brutally murdered by the real villain, Gideon.
That doesn't count. What other abuse did he suffer in the movie?
Well, that his role in the movie was to be an abuser. Right. Okay, but Black men got abused left and right in this movie by white slave owners. Her father, her actual husband.
So pull this around to like a bigger narrative, right? A bigger narrative. In this time period, and in this context, at what point is it even historically accurate to have had a character like Bigger Long?
Well, let me just say, I have conceded, and I did my own video earlier today.
Okay.
That was a flaw.
Check out Theo's video.
Yeah, it was on Facebook. That was a flaw in the movie. That was a legit flaw. In fact, I was reading about it, and they almost wrote Bigger Long out of there. They almost just completely pulled him out.
And they should have.
Yeah.
And so that's what they get for not.
True. But the hyperbole, the exaggeration in terms of the critique that I heard about him was that he in some way represented all Black men and was the only Black male depiction in this movie.
But I don't think I've never heard anybody say that he was the only Black male depiction. Okay. This was that they focused in on it because it was so historically inaccurate. It was absolutely unnecessary, and it literally
unnecessary.
And it fits in with the description of and a propaganda that they have continuously pushed on us.
Because
they could not make an entire movie where only white people were the enemy.
Okay.
They just couldn't do it. They just couldn't pull it out of them.
Just one bad nigger. Jeez, please. A bad nigger somewhere. True. I agree. I agree. Bigger Long did not need to be in that movie.
At all. So and it's a really big problem.
But even
I don't want to minimize that it is not a really big issue because 95% of it, it's like that piece is a significant piece. It is not a backstory. It's a forefront of the story. I don't know what you're doing right now.
Yeah, this is you.
I'm
blowing it out of proportion.
It's not blowing it out of proportion.
This is you blowing it out of proportion.
All right, so we're gonna move on and talk about something else.
So
can we talk about Byron Allen and Comcast? That's actually why I wanted to get on today.
Okay, cool.
Because Byron Allen and the Comcast thing is going on tomorrow. Yeah. So I guess let me sum up the Harriet. If y'all want to go see it, go see it. I'm not about to say boycott the movie. Like, that's not my stance. My stance isn't boycott the movie because I don't think any of those pieces are big enough to boycott the movie. What I do think is that we have to have enough choices that we need to demand more choices. We need to be more accountable to our narrative, and we need to never accept even a little bit of the bullshit because it's happened to us for so long.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I believe it. Yeah, you're all right, cool.
Okay. Byron Allen.
Byron Allen is that man. I mess with that cat. He's a boss.
What are y'all thoughts about what's going to happen tomorrow? I don't think we'll have any verdict in one day. By tomorrow, I don't know what that's going to look like or how that's supposed to like go down in one day if they're supposed to have a decision. But yeah, we definitely need our own.
Lisa, listen. Please go see the movie. That's all I'm gonna say.
She don't have to go see it.
I mean, I'm just gonna say, like, most black men are reacting like me. Let me tell you something. There's a young black girl got me to see the movie. Black men and women alike who have actually laid eyes on the movie, both weighed into my decision to see it. That's what I'm gonna say. Okay. So, but
you don't have to go see it. I'm not gonna go see it. I'm okay with that. I'll live.
She don't ever see no slave movies anyway, so this ain't really relevant because you don't ever see no slave movie. She be
Byron Allen.
She said Tuskegee Airman was a slave movie. Okay.
So, I'm not about to have an argument.
So you telling me my granddaddy was a slave?
I'm not saying that.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
All right. So Byron Allen. He about to go head to head with the giant.
Yeah. So there's been some recent updates that are that's a deal that you heard on Thanksgiving. I don't even know what that means, but it probably ain't good. Okay, my bad. This is my guy. He's all right. All right, so coming to Byron Allen. So there's been some developments on this situation, and I will actually say that yesterday and earlier today, I was trying to do a little bit more digging on like what's happening with Congress saying that they want to break up Comcast so first of all, let me not say Congress. A congressman is calling for Comcast to be broken up and, some of those other pieces. I just feel like this is going to be a very interesting fight. And I wish that we had not waited so long to get behind Byron Allen. Like, this thing didn't just pop up overnight. Mm-hmm. And so it feels like, first of all, the number one place that I've heard it until like Byron Allen did this whole like huge media. I mean, Byron Allen's been on every media outlet. Like
Breakfast Club, everything.
Yeah. He's been everywhere, right? But it feels like very 11th hour-ish. And I'm not quite sure why, because I feel like there could have been, some additional support. We could have really rallied behind some things. We could have really gotten some, some larger networks, some more national, news and things like that on it, because there are still people, even after like the Breakfast Club and like the Griot and some of these, there are still people who, when I'm like, yeah, so the Byron Allen case, and then they're giving me the, I don't know what you're talking about, right? And so I feel some kind of way about that. Like I have been following it for a little while, just since Antonio Moore talked about it. And listening to him, I was like, okay, this is interesting. I actually talked about this a couple of months ago. I was saying that conversation around like what happens in Black media and how we're excluded out of Black media has been one of the sole drivers of a contract that I recently got, because it was literally about like not going in and advertising to our community for free. If you want to, I spent 5 years building a network inside of this community. So if you want to tap into my network that I've built, like, you're not going to do it for free. And that all literally spun out of the conversation. That I was listening to with Byron Allen and Tone Talks on one of his videos or whatever. But that whole conversation for me sparked a little bit of activism. I didn't literally did nothing mainstream about it, nothing big scale. I was just like, oh. Like, I didn't know that this was that big of a deal, that all these dollars were going around and were not being, passed through us. We're not coming through our channels. We're not coming through whatever. So I was like, well, I won't be doing any advertising, right? And it started off as something as simple as saying, no, I'm not going to take this government entity and I'm not going to push out this information to our community without them paying me to do it. So now I have a contract with them to get information out to our community, right? So it's like, but that was a simple mindset that I did not realize until I realized it. So I feel like the conversation should have definitely been out there on a larger scale. And I feel like it's kind of this, too little, too late push, in my opinion, for at least for our community to have like a really strong, tangible way to support. Like now we're talking about it, but we're just starting to talk about it in the Supreme Court case tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. I think here's what's going to happen. Let's say it's worst case scenario. Goes in, Byron Allen loses the case. You will have the snowball, by the way, that he's created is still growing at this point. Whatever the court case is going to be is going to even gain more momentum, whatever that looks like, right? So worst case scenario, Byron loses. There's some crazy, legal backlash to it. I fully believe that something like this is going to be mainstream media, and we will begin the Comcast boycott by canceling our subscriptions. Those of us who can do it, I understand. Look, I understand.
No, but that's just the place that frustrates me inside of our community is that it is always fucking reactive.
It's always reactive.
And I mean,
but what is the truth about that? The truth to me is that so many of us live with our heads down in survival mode, So many of us holding down 4 or 5 jobs, gotta feed the kid, I gotta get to sleep.
Right.
What y'all talking about? And then I gotta wake up and then maybe I'll smoke some weed, have some sex, and watch a movie, and then I gotta repeat because I gotta keep my sanity going, right? So the reason why a lot of us are behind is because we don't have the latitude, the bandwidth to actually get proactive. Proactivity almost is a privilege, damn near, in certain areas, because that means that you have the latitude to see something, reflect on it, decide, have a plan, execute. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so this is a product of us living in America, living under this capitalist system, and figuring out a way in which we can try to survive. So yeah, there's probably a bunch of shit that's coming down the pipe.
Yeah, but also it's an addiction to our, and this is where we can get into everything. I mean, first of all, if you're on this channel, listen, anything I have to say, this is probably not you, right? But it's like we have to be able to get off of some of the entertainment. It is like we're so entertainment heavy that we really struggle. Like, yes, when you okay, so first of all, let me remove the conversation first, or like take a step back from that for a second, right? What you'll find between people who are successful and people who are not successful. Most successful people have not just been sitting around, like first generation success. So let me not talk about second, third generation, passed down, whatever. First generation successful. They're not sitting around, going to work and then coming home and then thinking about the things that they would like to do that may be nice someday, right? My father, he's a baby boomer, but what I will tell you this about my dad growing up, I was not close to my father until adulthood. When I was younger, I really didn't know my dad at all because my dad was always working all the time. My dad would get up about 4 o'clock in the morning. My dad would head over to San Francisco. He worked all day. My dad stayed keeping his name at the top of the overtime list. So quite often he would work immediately following work. He would work time and a half. He would work double time. He may work a 24-hour shift, come home. We couldn't talk to him. We couldn't see him because he had to get his rest because then he was going back to work. So when my dad and my parents were able to achieve the type of success that they were able to achieve first generation, like I saw firsthand that was a offshoot of working. So on an occasion when my dad would come home on a weekend and not be working and sat down in front of the TV to enjoy a game and a beer, like we were not able to bother him. He did not sit in front of television all day long. He did not get off of work, come home and sit in front of the television like so many of us do. And so when people talk about why they don't get to see the type of success that they want to see, when we as a community talk about why we don't get where we need to get, and one of the primary differences, if we want to look at where we are today, even if you don't count integration before, when you look at the civil rights movement, they weren't coming home and just hanging out. These people were strategically planning. They were getting off of full day shifts of mental, physical, and emotional trauma and coming home and organizing.
That's some real talk. And so I think that our ancestors set an interesting precedent that working twice as hard to get just as much ethic that they had is the only way to do America. The only way to do America if you're Black. If you slack a minute, if you pull back off that throttle that their momentum got us on, then what you have is this craziness that goes on, right? I do believe that you are onto something. When you look at the amount of hours that a lot of us play video games, you know what I'm saying? When you look at the amount of hours that a lot of us do watch TV, you know what I'm saying? Literally, that's time that could be spent learning a craft, learning a new trade, self-studying, getting a new degree, something that would enhance your ability to earn the income that would turn into the wealth that would be passed down to make up that gap, right?
Right.
And it's not fair. It ain't fair. But none of this ever has been.
But we're not even in a place where we're talking about fairness. Right. You know what I'm saying? And if anything, that would be the one.
I'm just saying that that's the precedent that they set. And we can't come from these giants that we came from and be any smaller than them and expect to keep their momentum going. And I think that maybe something broke in our culture when we integrated, because we got other influences outside of that. A lot of us believe that we made it, but we have to start picking up that mantle again, because
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would call it broke. I would say we've just been lulled to sleep.
Fair.
I talked about that. So I talked about that in my own story, right? So some of y'all know I was in the military. If you don't know, I was in the military. And this is just a real story for me. So I go over to Iraq, right? And when we first we get to Kuwait, we do you hear about convoys being dangerous, right? So we do this convoy from Iraq to Kuwait, from Kuwait to Iraq. It's dangerous. So that part is I'm wide awake, right? But we get into Iraq and I am on base, and I remember the first bomb that goes off. Was an RPG that came into our camp, right? So I remember that first one. It actually hit really close to us, close enough that we heard the whistle, shook the ground. It was oh shit, we're for real
in a war.
Right? We're in war for real.
That's war.
And some of y'all, if y'all are in the military, whatever, happy Veterans Day. Or were in the military, I should say happy Veterans Day. But if you've been in that situation, you're oh, that's real legit, right? And so then over time, and not even a long time, I was only in country for 365 days minus the 2 weeks. I actually got my 2 weeks vacation. Everybody did not get that 2 weeks vacation. I did, but I was in country for 365 days. Those are my words. And within 365 days, I got accustomed to bombs dropping. So I worked the night shift, and I'm sitting in my trailer or whatever. It is in the middle of the day, which means I'm supposed to be asleep because I've worked all night, and there's a bomb going off and there's an alarm sounding, and everyone is supposed to be getting out and going into bunkers. And I just didn't want to go. I'm tired and I want to go to sleep. And so there are literally bombs going off, and I just didn't give a fuck, and I didn't want to go. And I stayed in my bed. People are banging on the door. Where's Johnson? Where's Johnson? I was, and so I would just not ignore them, right? And so I remember after the all clear is given, they're banging on doors. They're trying to account for people. After that, you have to account for anybody who wasn't present in the bunker. Everybody's got to be accounted for, right? That's how you find out who's died or who's injured or whatever. So they're trying to account, and here I am straight up oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. I went to sleep. I took NyQuil, right? That was a common thing. Oh, you want to get some sleep? Take some NyQuil so your ass can be knocked out, right? So I'm yeah, I took some NyQuil. I didn't hear nothing. I'm sorry, Sergeant, and the reality of that is that is that's Black America. That is how quickly you can be inundated into a situation that is literally life or death, right? And you just go with it. And so what turned out different for me was I just so happened to have been there when there was a man who was 3 days from going home. There was a bomb that came in. He didn't go into the bunker. He got killed. He was 3 days from going home. He had been there for a year, had a wife and kid at home. That hit home to me. For me, but that was a wake-up call, right? But prior to that, I'm literally not going into the bunker to protect myself when there are bombs flying. We can get accustomed to shitty conditions really quickly, really easily, if we're not careful. And that's why even as simple as it is to say Bigger Long took this much of the movie. It doesn't matter. We're accustomed to a narrative, and we have to work to get unaccustomed. Bringing it back to, you know, where we are inside of our community, we have to get unaccustomed to how easy it is to go to work and come home, and we have to be willing to put in some of that extra work in order for us to move forward. So what they really did was they allowed us to get comfortable enough to not care. A lot of us just don't care. We're comfortable. Look, my kids wasn't in here, then they still call me. All right, so let's move on to the Rodney Reed real quick, so that we can get to this last topic, so we can get out of here, because Theo has got. Oh, can I say what you got?
I mean, I got a lady waiting. My lady waits. I must tell her. My lady waits.
Okay, just the lady.
Yes,
I won't talk about nothing else.
Keep it pushing.
All right, so this Rodney Reed thing really bothers me, and I don't have much of an opinion on it. All I know is I didn't sign nothing. I didn't sign no.
I did. Should I not sign the petition?
I don't know. I didn't sign the petition. That's what I'm gonna say. I didn't sign the petition. Okay. But here's how, because I feel like it was a whole convoluted story, and I get that they make those up against us all the time, but I feel some kind of way. So the Rodney Reed, what they pushed out about Rodney Reed was sign this petition because there's all this evidence that said he didn't kill Becky. Great. I agree. He probably didn't kill Becky. It looks like, according to what they are producing in the case, says that he may have been having an affair with Becky.
Bigelow.
Are you serious? Seriously?
He was giving it that bigger and longer.
That he may have been having an affair with.
Strokes.
You need to go. How old are you?
I'm just saying he was giving it a bigger.
How old are you?
He was giving it a cream pie.
Okay.
Go ahead. What's up?
This is why I come on by myself.
I was saying we having a good time. It was cracking.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Rodney Reed was smashing Becky.
That's what it appears, right? So that's what it appears. Yeah, and I'm fine with that. So do I agree that he probably should not be sorry guys. But
she's saying basically he should die for smashing Becky.
No, I'm not actually.
That's what you're saying.
No, I'm not. Wait, hold on. Don't put that out there. I'm not. So here's my thing, right? I absolutely believe that he probably, like, I could sign it if it was like take him off death row. I could sign it if we want to say he's innocent of killing Becky, innocent maybe even of raping Becky, right? But now we have the issue of these other 5 potential rapes, one of them being a 12-year-old girl. And the details that's coming out are a little bit foggy. So first of all, the first rape is supposedly one that he was acquitted for the first rape. So first of all, so I want to break down my issue with this because I feel like it is so irresponsible the way that they're putting out this information. And I get that time is of essence because he's obviously he's on death row, right? So time is of the essence. But in the first rape, what they're saying is that he has what looks like or may appear to be a mentally ill or mentally less capable. I don't know. They're not calling her I don't know what.
Yeah, she's
correct.
She's
terminology.
She's not neurotypical. Okay, she's cognitively challenged.
Cognitively challenged. There we go. I was like, I don't know what the politically correct term is today.
Yes.
But ultimately, they're saying that he had this girlfriend who was not all there, and the girlfriend, and so now they're saying that he raped her. Now he said that first he didn't. I mean that. The testimony was like, no, we didn't have sex. Then when they tested for DNA, or when they were saying that they were going to take DNA, he then admitted to having sex with her, right?
Oh, okay.
So that's first of all.
That's bad news. Huh? That's bad news.
Right. So first of all, it's like, nope, we didn't do nothing. Oh, you want my DNA? Oh, well, actually, yeah, we did have sex. Okay, so then if they take, now, again, the details are not really coming out, right? But it takes 4 years before they go to court for this, in which case he was acquitted. So first of all, just the longevity of the amount of time that it takes for them to go to court. And then at this point, it's like a whole issue of how clearly was that presented, who was defending her, all of these things. to me, all of that is very convoluted, especially the more that you get into how often, and we can talk about sexual assault on men, but sexual assault on women is a huge deal. It doesn't get treated the way that it should. It doesn't, and I'm not even going to talk about the fact that, yes, absolutely, there are women who make up lies. However, there's a lot more women who are not making up lies, who have legitimately been sexually assaulted, and who don't get any sort of justice, repercussions, or whatever. It gets to be a very difficult thing to prove. It gets to be calling her character into play and all these other type of convoluted things. So if it was just that case alone versus then then you jump up to all these years later and it's Becky. But when they talk about this long history, this is a long history. So it already took 4 years just before that case went to trial and then was acquitted, right? So then after that, there's a case of a 12-year-old little girl. So supposedly he came in, and again, I don't have all the details. Like, I've searched, they're not really putting out a lot of details about this. But what the story says so far is that he vaginally and anally raped a 12-year-old girl. No. So now that case was dropped. No. Why that case was dropped, I don't know, because again, No. My issue again is how sexual assault cases and rape cases are not pursued and prosecuted in a way that is supposed to. So having a case dropped really doesn't necessarily say anything.
Mean that it wasn't that he was innocent. True.
It does not mean that at all. And so now we're talking about 2 cases. So now when you jump up to this situation, how he even got caught around Becky's murder in the first place is because supposedly he was caught going after a 19-year-old woman trying to rape and kill her. Then at the trial, they have 2 other women that come out. And I'm like, now hold up.
I didn't hear none of this. Hold on. Wait.
Right, that part. We don't hear none of this.
Wait. Hold on.
Before they say, wait, guys, he's innocent.
This is a lot.
Okay.
So I'm asking questions.
It's a lot. Ask questions.
Where did the counter narrative come from? Are we sure that this wasn't information around the case fabricated by the police officers, the dirty cops, who were trying to throw him under the bus?
There are 2 definitive cases for sure. The girlfriend, which he actually went all the way to trial for.
The cognitively challenged
girlfriend, who he went all the way to trial for and was acquitted. That happened. Mm-hmm. Then the rape of the 12-year-old girl, which was dropped. Those are 2 for sure cases. Mm-hmm. And they're several years apart. So it took him 4 years from the rape of the girlfriend to actual trial. And then after that is the rape of the 12-year-old girl.
No.
So let's just start.
I didn't know about any of that.
So
That's crazy. I'm ill-informed to talk about this.
But that's my point.
I'm ill-informed to talk about this.
Sean King is someone who I respect. So I was going to sign it. And then I did a little bit more digging. I said I like to try to come as informed. I'm not saying I know everything. That's why I ain't talk about ADOS and NBA. I'm not ready to talk about that. But I try. So I do a little bit more digging, and I was like, something is not right here. Now what they're saying is that at the current trial around Becky, right? Yeah. He wasn't able to. All these pieces weren't able to, come out or whatever. And then they said that the best friend of the 12-year-old girl. Now First of all, the 12-year-old girl ain't been she was a minor. Her name's not released. As far as I can tell, as far as everything I looked at says that she hasn't come forward or anything like that. But there's a 12-year-old girl who was raped in 89. So this girl would be, what is that going to make her? That's 30 years ago. So 42.
No.
Right? 89 was 30 years ago.
Yep.
42.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this girl's not come forward, but supposedly the best friend of the 12-year-old girl. Now, who verified she was the best friend? I don't know. So the best friend of the 12-year-old girl claims that she came to the defense of Rodney at Becky's case. Does that even make any sense? I don't know. But she wasn't allowed to testify.
I would be
interested. And I'm just trying to figure out what
I would be interested to listen. The police in that case fabricated a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. I've seen it in places before where defamatory evidence that was fabricated was released post facto as if it were fact. So I'd like to figure out the actual ramifications of this. Where did it come from? Because cops create evidence all the time.
So go look it up, because the other so there are 2 cases that seem to be unverified, never arrested, never nothing, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those could be fabricated. I don't know, just to beef it up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Then there's a third one, which they said they were after him.
Yeah.
When that's how he got caught for the other one in the first place, from the 19-year-old girl.
Gotcha.
So potentially, at least there's 3 potential rape cases against this man over multiple years.
No.
So even if he was not,
No.
so am I saying that he should be killed for Becky regardless? No. However, I don't feel like this is the man to go to bat for. I'm not really sure.
If there's a multiple rapist, then that's he should at least be in jail. But I will say that I can't call it, because I got to look more into what you're talking about.
So we'll talk about it later.
We will.
So Theo's got to go, y'all.
I gotta go.
His girl is calling him. He got to go.
I gotta go.
So we're gonna wrap it up, but I am gonna come back. I just want to thank y'all for joining with me and all of that good stuff. I don't know exactly what my schedule is going to be. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't know exactly what my schedule is going to be, but I am going to determine it really soon as we are working. And I'm gonna tour my office. I just need to have my name on the door first. Can we just wait till we have the name on the door so y'all can see the office space?
Yeah.
It's cute. It's little, but it's ours.
It's gonna be nice.
On Welton. Y'all hit the subscribe button, share out this video. We're just talking. Y'all know what it is. We just talking. But I will be back. I will be back sooner than later. Probably Thursday, because I have a whole nother thing that I want to talk about that I feel like some of this is actually kind of playing into, which is how we romanticize our Black leaders. And I feel like this is I really have some heavy shit on my heart about how we romanticize our Black leaders. It is
it's our male Black leaders, or it's everybody.
No.
It's
no. And I'll just give you just one clip before you go, because I know you gotta go. But I'll just give you one clip, right? Just real quick. In general, how we romanticize our leaders. Can we all say that we all know Harriet was the shit? She was the shit, right? I mean, she's the truth. Let's just say that. Forget the movie, forget the way. Everything that we know of Harriet says Harriet was the shit.
She was the HNIC.
So I don't even want to say the name, but I do want to say the name just to add context. So Yvette Carnell was talking about this on a video with Antonio Moore, right? So she was saying how one of the things that she didn't like about the movie was how they always made Harriet look so scared. She was running around always looking scared. But wait, hold on. Let's just say, for shits and giggles, that was accurate. That Harriet looked scared running around the movie. And her thing was, Harriet was, one of our most courageous leaders ever, right? So here's what I want to know. Is courage the absence of fear, or is it the ability to act despite of?
In spite of fear. Yeah, so, I heard that. Her eyes were bucked the whole time. Nigga, no, they weren't. They weren't. You know what I'm saying? Period. And if they were, she was going through some scary stuff, especially during her first escape.
But that's my point, right?
She has a right to be afraid.
Even from our most, and this is not a hit out on nobody. I'm just literally saying, even from some of our intellectual people, right? Some of our most intellectual people inside of the Black community, we have a tendency to romanticize what somebody went through. Did you just do all that? You didn't even cover your mouth. That was rude.
Alrighty then.
We have a tendency to romanticize what we believe somebody else would have been through. We can all acknowledge that Harriet was the shit, but do we think she wasn't scared? I mean, I don't think that is an issue of not being scared. I think if you're going to escape in the middle of the night and be going on this literally life or death journey, not just once, not just you got yourself, but then you went back and you kept going back and you kept going back, right? You learn to act despite of your fear, not that you didn't have it, fear, right? Yeah. Not that you were absent of it, right? And so I think oftentimes we see this space where we feel like people who we hold up high, we feel like they are perfect in some kind of way without acknowledging that those people also have flaws. So anyway, we'll talk about that probably on Thursday is when I will come back on to talk about that. But thank you, Theo.
No problem.
For coming on with me tonight.
No problem.
Thank you. All right, y'all. So we're out of here. Have a good night.
Big and long.
You're